Hello learners, welcome to education program online. I am teacher Christine Adekur, taking you in mathematics for senior 3 and senior 4. So our learners, we are continuing from where we stopped on the last lesson. And on the last lesson, our topic remains real functions and limits. Real functions and limits. Real functions and limits. Subheading is graphing a function. Graphing a function. So this is where we are now. Graphing a function. Under it we looked at the two types of functions, that is the linear functions and non-linear functions. So in our previous lesson we looked at what we call the linear functions, where we said it is in the format of a x plus b, where it is graphs are always of a straight line graph. And now we are moving to what we call the non-linear graph or functions. And under it, we said examples of the non-linear graphs are quadratic graphs or quadratic functions. So we are straight picking up from what we call the quadratic graph. Quadratic graphs. Quadratic graph. The quadratic graph. Quadratic graphs. So I believe we are not very new on what we call the quadratic, because quadratic, we have what we call the quadratic equations, and then we have what we call the quadratic graphs. So when you look at the quadratic graphs, these are graphs, or these are graphs in all equations or functions which are in format of a x square plus bx plus c. So you say these are graphs of functions. These are graphs of functions. Graphs of functions. Graphs of functions. Graphs of functions whose general format is a x square plus b x plus c equals to 0. So these are the formats of what we call the quadratic graph. So with the quadratic graph, you will find that the functions appear in this nature. You will have the first term consisting of the square, and which square is the power of 2. And then the second term will also contain the variable, and then we have the constant. So this is what we call the quadratic equations or the quadratic graph. So if we are asked to draw a graph of a quadratic function, what happens is that your graph will appear in what we call the parabola graphs. They look like a U, or they may look like N. So then you know that these are quadratic graphs. So let us look at the example. Let us look at the example. I will simply say we can treat this as example 2, because we are still under what we call the graphs. We are still under graphs. So under example 2, we are specific on example on quadratic graph. So the question says, draw the graph of y equals to x square and state it is range. Are you seeing? They have said draw the graph of y equals to x square and state it is range. I believe you still remember what we say, what a range is and how to get the range. So when we are to state this, when we are to draw this graph, before you draw the graph, you need to know that on your graph there must be a coordinates of x and y, or the values of x and y that can satisfy the function. And therefore, now when you look at your question, there are no values of x and there are no values of y. How do we draw now a graph? So what do? You are to take note of the previous example. If the objects are not given, then you are restricted to take the first 3 digits, the first 3 real numbers. And when we take the first 3 real numbers, bear in the mind that this is a quadratic. So if it is a quadratic, that means it is going to affect both sides. It's going to affect the x-axis left and right, and it is also going to affect the y-axis, both north and south. That is what you are supposed to have in the mind when you are dealing with a quadratic graph. So your first step is to draw what we call the table of values. Your solution, you draw a table of values. So your table of values will appear in this nature. So you say this is for x and this is for y, and our y here is given as x square. Remember I said if we are taking the 3 points, or the 3 points of on the x-axis, you are to take it is going to affect the 2 sides of the x-axis, the negative and then the positive. So we are going to have 3 points on the negative x and 3 points on the negative positive x. So meaning that we are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we shall have our table of values in that nature, and then we say our our points, which is neutral, is 0. So the 0 will be in the middle of the x-axis. And then now from 0, we are going to move forward, which is right, positive, 3 steps. That is, we shall have positive 1, positive 2, and positive 3. And then we do the same. From 0, we move backward, 3 steps. We shall have negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So, after you have created what we call the objects or the domains. So, after getting the domains, then now we can be able to do what? To substitute in the function given in order for us to get the value of what? The coordinates of y. And how do we substitute? We simply come and say, if x is negative 3, we are beginning from here, right? We say, if x, our function is x square, and therefore, if x is negative 3, what will happen to this? So we are going to square the negative 3, which will give us 9. So here we are going to have 9. And then we also move ahead by saying, if x is negative 2, if x is negative 2, meaning x, we are going to substitute x with negative 2. And when we square it, we get x negative 2. When we square it, we get positive 4. So when we square negative 2, we get positive 4. Meaning that here will be positive 4. So we shall fill here as positive 4. And then when x is negative 1, that means we are going to square it, it will give us positive 1. And then when x is neutral, which is 0, we shall get also 0. And then here the same. X is positive 1, when we square it, we get positive 1. X is positive 2, when we square it, we get positive 4. X is positive 3, when we square it, we get positive 9. And then now, after that, after getting the table of values, then it becomes very easy for you now to plot. You now come and say, therefore, points to plot. Points to plot. That is x, y. X, y. X, y. So we are going to correspond these points. We look at it on the x, and then what is it? The corresponding element on the y. So we shall have x is negative 3, and then y is positive 9. And then we have x is negative 2, and y is positive 4. Then we have x is negative 1, and y is positive 1. Then we have x is 0, y is 0. X is 1, y is 1. X is 2, y is 4. And then x is 3, y is 9. Please, learners, once you have made these points, plotting a graph becomes very easy for you. Then now, straight away, you go to your graph. You go to your graph. I want us to look at the graph, this chart, which is on our whiteboard. So we assume that this is our graph, the y-axis and then the x-axis. So On the x-axis, we have the starting point, which is 0, which is here. And then we have smaller squares, smaller lines. So each line here is representing 1 unit. So we begin from 0, we move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we have 5, which is this main or the sub-main line. And then from 5 we have 6, 7, 8, 9, and then we have 10. And then the graph will continue in that nature. So what I wanted you to know is that each square there is representing 1 unit as our scale. And then when you move also backward, that is on the left side of the x-axis, we have 0, then we have -1, we have -2, we have -3, -4, and then -5. And then -6, -7, -8, and so on. Then we come to what we call the codomain. The codomain is the y-axis. We have also 2 sides. We have the positive y-axis and then the negative y-axis. So on the positive y-axis, from 0, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the numbering continues in that nature. So I've decided to use only those few digits or few numbers so that the graph is not too congested or dirty. Then when you come to down part of the y-axis, we find the negative. It represents the negative. So after you have got that as your graph, you can now come to your points here. The first point is x is -3 and y is +9. So you come to negative. Where is the -3? So you move from 0 here. This is -1, -2, -3. So -3 is the third line. Then you follow this line straight upward where +9 is. So we find that we have +1, +1, +2, +3, +4, +5, +6, +7, +8, +9. This is where you mark. So you mark on the y-axis, not on the x-axis. So our point, the first point is here. That is -3, +9. And then you come to the second point, which is -2, +4. You still also come to your 0 here, the center, and then move 3 steps backward on the negative x. So we have -1, and then this is -2. And then move forward on the y-axis 4 steps. That is +1, +2, +3, +4. And then you mark here as your +4. And then you come to point number 3, that is -1, +1. So you come to 0 here, and then move 1 step backward on the x-axis. That is -1 is here, and then 1 step forward, which is 1. So it will be here. Then you mark it there. So we are done with the first side, that is the negative of x-axis. And then we come to 0 on the x-axis, 0 on the y-axis. So it means that 0 on the x-axis, it is at the center here. You mark it at exactly at the center here. 0 on the x and 0 on the y. And then now you come to point number 5. Point number 5 is +1, +1. So on the x-axis, +1. You come here to your center here, 0, and then you move 1 step, that is 1. Then move forward on the y-axis 1 step, which is 1 here. So your marker 1, 1 here. And then we come to point number 6, which is +2 and +4 on the y-axis. So you come here and say this is +2 on the x-axis I will move from 0, 1, 2, and then 4 steps on the y-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you mark it here. It is on this line of 4. You mark it there. And then the last point is 3 on the y-x-axis and 9 on the y-axis, all positive. So you come at 0 here. You say, I will move 3 steps forward, which is 1, 2, 3. And then I move forward on the y-axis upward 9 steps. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you mark. So after plotting like that, then now you are going to join. When you are joining the points on the graph, join using your free hand. Don't use a ruler. So we are going to join this. So you will begin from here, join to these points, come to this one, and then you come to the center here, and then you join, you move. It gives us what we call in the shape of a U, which is a parabola curve. So this is what we call the parabola curves are curves of the quadratic functions. So they look like a U. Sometimes you may plot and it turns upside. It looks like a N. Then you know this is a quadratic graph. So, dear learners, after you have known how to plot, then you can now be able to testify what range is the value x square. What range is the value x square? So you will find that when you look at it, the y equals to x square, from this point up to point 9 here, all this, I just want you to look at the points of y. Look at the points of y. All the points of y are positive. That means the range, we simply say the range is positive real. The range is positive real. You don't look at the x, because we look at what is the outcome of the x if it is substituted by the objects. What will be the outcome? So the outcome is what where we describe the range, and therefore we have seen that all the x y axis, all the points are positive. Then we simply say all the points are positive real. That is the range. With that, learners, I believe you have picked something on the quadratic. I repeat by saying that quadratic are in form of ax square plus bx plus c. And when you are asked to draw a graph, first, before you draw your graph, draw what we call the table of values. And the tables of values, in the case it is like this, then you'll know that if this is quadratic, it is going to affect both sides of the axis, positive and negative. Therefore, you will get your table of values. After table of values, be able to identify the points to plot, and then plot your graph, and then join the points using your free graph. With that, my learners, we are not going to continue with a new subheading. I want us to stop in this point of the quadratic graph, and before we stop, I want you to take down these questions as your exercise. Take down these questions as your exercise. So the question says, draw the graph of the following functions. So this is your exercise. It is combining the previous lesson and this. So you will identify from the functions given which function is this. Is it a linear or a quadratic? Draw the graph. Draw a graph of the following. The graph of the following functions. A graph of the following functions. Of the following functions, x belonging to the real number, and state the range. A, fx equals to 4x plus 2. B, fx equals to 2x minus 4. C, we have y equals to 2x squared plus 3. And then lastly we have function y equals to function x equals to x squared plus 4x. So dear learners, take those questions and try to do as your exercise homework. Identify the function first. That is the first step. Identify the functions. Is it a linear function or a quadratic function? So if it is a linear function, then you will be requested to draw a linear graph. And then if it is a quadratic function, then you are supposed to draw a quadratic graph. In case where there is no domains, you are to take the domains. Consider the first 3 digits or the first 3 points to help you as a domain. With this, my dear learners, we have come to the end of this lesson, and I believe that you have picked something, and with this I wish you the best. Bye. We meet next time.